What if I told you that one man in this countdown fought the heavyweight champion of the world in a real boxing match, then went on to police-occupied Baghdad during the First World War, and then won an Academy Award? What if I told you another was rejected by the Marines for being too small, and went on to become the most decorated combat soldier in the history of the United States military? And what if I told you that one of the most terrifying villains in Hollywood history was arrested for marijuana, sentenced to a chain gang, and escaped, all before he turned 17? These are the 10 most dangerous Western villains of old Hollywood. Not the best bad guys on screen. The men whose real lives made their movie roles look tame. And the man at number 1? He did something on a frozen battlefield that no screenwriter in Hollywood would dare put in a script, because no audience would believe a single man could do it. Number 10. The gentle giant behind the meanest face on television, Claude Akins. For 40 years, Claude Akins made a living scaring the hell out of audiences. He played thugs, crooked lawmen, and stone-cold killers in some of the biggest westerns ever made. He locked up Dean Martin in Rio Bravo. He hunted Randolph Scott across the desert in Comanche Station. He stared down Lee Marvin in The Killers. And for 5 seasons on network television, he played Sheriff Lobo, the most lovably corrupt lawman in prime time. But the real Claude Akins was a different man entirely. Born on May 25, 1926, in Nelson, Georgia, the son of a stonecutter who became a police officer, Akins grew up in Bedford, Indiana. During World War II, he enlisted in the United States Army Signal Corps and served in Burma and the Philippines, rising to the rank of Master Sergeant. After the war, he earned his degree from Northwestern University's School of Theater and walked into Hollywood, standing 6'2" with a booming voice and a face that directors cast as the heavy before he opened his mouth. But off-screen, Akins was one of the most well-liked men in the business. He married his wife Therese in 1952 and stayed married to her for the rest of his life. Colleagues described him as genial, down-to-earth, and the first man to buy a round for the crew. The scariest face on television belonged to one of the kindest men in the room. Akins died of stomach cancer on January 27, 1994, at 67. But does the next entry's Jekyll and Hyde contrast make even Akins look one-dimensional? Number 9. The nastiest man on screen, who was the gentlest man alive, Dan Duryea. Dan Duryea slapped more women on screen than any actor in Hollywood history. He made a career out of playing sniveling, sadistic, double-crossing rats, the kind of men you wanted to reach through the screen and strangle. And audiences loved to hate him so much that he received thousands of fan letters, many of them from women. Born on January 23, 1907, in White Plains, New York, Duryea broke through on Broadway as the scheming Leo Hubbard in The Little Foxes, and Hollywood grabbed him immediately. Fritz Lang cast him as the abusive pimp Johnny Prince in Scarlet Street in 1945. He played a blackmailer in The Woman in the Window, a Nazi spy wielding lethal shears in Ministry of Fear, and the charismatic gunman Waco Johnny Dean in Winchester 73, opposite Jimmy Stewart in 1950, one of the great Western villain performances ever put on film. But here is the detail that makes Dan Duryea one of the most fascinating men on this list. Off-screen, he was the polar opposite of every character he ever played. Soft-spoken, devoted father, community volunteer. He married Helen Bryan in 1932 and stayed married to her until her death in 1967. 35 years in a town where marriages lasted 35 weeks. His New York Times obituary said it plainly. His toughness stirred fan mail, but in real life, he aided community activities. The nastiest villain in Hollywood went home every night to the same woman, the same house, and the same quiet life. Duryea died of cancer on June 7, 1968, at 61. But does the next entry's near miss at Olympic glory make Duryea's double life look simple? Number 8. The Olympic-caliber diver who delivered the most quoted villain line in movie history, Strother Martin. What we have got here is failure to communicate. That line, spoken by a gaunt character actor standing over Paul Newman in Cool Hand Luke in 1967, became the most quoted villain line in movie history. But the man who delivered it was hiding one of the strangest backstories in all of Hollywood. Born on March 26, 1919, in Kokomo, Indiana, Strother Martin was not built like a villain. He was built like an athlete. Nicknamed T-Bone, he won the National Junior Springboard Diving Championship at 17 and dove competitively for the University of Michigan. During World War II, he served in the United States Navy as a swimming instructor. After the war, Martin entered the Adult National Springboard Diving Championship with one goal: to make the 1948 United States Olympic team. He finished third, one spot away from the Olympics. So the man who delivered the most famous villain line in cinema history was not some back-alley tough guy. He was an elite athlete who nearly represented his country at the Olympic Games. Martin moved to Los Angeles, worked as a swimming instructor to the children of Marion Davies and Charlie Chaplin, and drifted into bit parts that led to a lifelong partnership with director Sam Peckinpah. He appeared in The Wild Bunch, Butch Cassidy, and The Sundance Kid. He played Colonel Stonehill opposite John Wayne in True Grit, all in a single year, 1969. Martin died of a heart attack on August 1, 1980, at 61. But does the next entry's genuinely terrifying off-screen persona make Martin's villain work look like theater? Number 7. The man actors were afraid to look in the eye. Richard Boone. Most television villains are playing a part. Richard Boone was not playing. Every actor who worked with him said the same thing. You did not make eye contact with Richard Boone unless you were ready for what came next. Born on June 18, 1917, in Los Angeles, Boone was a boxer, an oil field roughneck, and a painter before he ever considered acting. During World War II, he enlisted in the United States Navy and served as an aerial gunner in the Pacific. After the war, he used the GI Bill to study at the Actors Studio in New York, where his classmates included Marlon Brando, Carl Malden, and Eva Marie Saint. But where Brando channeled his intensity into method, Boone channeled his into menace. He was described as a craggy, determined, and almost menacing figure whose uncompromising commitment to his work brought him into constant conflict with directors, producers, and fellow actors. People did not cross Richard Boone. His signature role was Paladin in Have Gun, Will Travel from 1957 to 1963. The cultured, black-clad gunfighter for hire who carried a business card that read, Have Gun, Will Travel. Wire Paladin, San Francisco. The show was a top 3 rated series, and Boone directed multiple episodes himself. His final major role was the villain Mike Sweeney in John Wayne's last film, The Shootist, in 1976. Boone reportedly took the part on one condition. Wayne had to promise to kill him violently on screen. Boone died of throat cancer on January 10, 1981, at 63. His ashes were scattered in the Pacific. But does the next entry's life before Hollywood make Boone's tough guy reputation look like posturing? Number 6. The carnival prizefighter who boxed the heavyweight champion of the world, Victor McLaglen. Victor McLaglen did not become tough in Hollywood. He was tough before Hollywood existed. Born on December 10, 1886, in Tunbridge Wells, England, McLaglen left home at 14 and tried to enlist in the British Army to fight in the Boer War. They found out his real age and discharged him, so he became a carnival prizefighter. He toured with traveling shows, standing in a ring and offering cash to any man in the crowd who could last 3 rounds against him. Then, on March 10, 1909, at the Vancouver Athletic Club, McLaglen stepped into the ring for a 6-round exhibition against the heavyweight champion of the world, Jack Johnson. Johnson had just taken the title from Tommy Burns and was the most feared fighter on the planet. McLaglen went the distance. Johnson never knocked him down. In McLaglen's own words, years later, he said, "Johnson never knocked me down, but he sure beat the living daylights out of me." His known boxing record was 11 wins, 6 losses, and 1 draw, with 9 knockouts. In 1918, the British Army named him Heavyweight Champion of the Armed Forces. During the First World War, McLaglen served as an officer with the 10th Battalion, Middlesex Regiment, deploying to Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq. He served as the military police chief for occupied Baghdad, responsible for keeping order in one of the most volatile cities on Earth. After the war, Hollywood came calling. Director John Ford made McLaglen his go-to brawler. He won the Academy Award for Best Actor as the tortured informer Jeepo Nolan in The Informer in 1935. He played the brawling Sergeant Quincannon across Ford's cavalry trilogy, Fort Apache, She Wore a Yellow Ribbon, and Rio Grande. And at 65, he went toe-to-toe with John Wayne in the legendary fistfight in The Quiet Man in 1952, a scene so convincing that audiences believed they were watching two men genuinely trying to hurt each other. McLaglen died of a heart attack on November 7, 1959, at 72, about a month after his final role in an episode of Rawhide. But does the next entry's resurrection from career death make even McLaglen's prize-fighting days look like a warm-up ACT? Number 5. The broke, forgotten veteran who became the most iconic villain in spaghetti western history, Lee Van Cleef. By 1964, Lee Van Cleef was finished. Or at least, that is what Hollywood thought. Born Clarence Leroy Van Cleef Jr. on January 9, 1925, in Somerville, New Jersey, Van Cleef enlisted in the United States Navy in September 1942, at 17. He served as a sonarman aboard a submarine chaser, and then the minesweeper USS Incredible, sweeping live mines out of harbors during the invasion of southern France in Operation Dragoon, and then clearing the Soviet naval base at Sevastopol in the Black Sea. He was discharged in March 1946 as Sonarman First Class and was awarded the Bronze Star. Hollywood noticed his hawk-like features and his genuinely unusual eyes, one blue and one green, and cast him as a silent, menacing outlaw in High Noon in 1952, his very first film. When the studio told him to get his hooked nose fixed, Van Cleef refused. Then the work dried up. In 1958, a devastating car crash wrecked his knee so badly that doctors said he might never ride a horse again. His career collapsed. He took up painting and interior decorating. He sold artwork on the side. He lived on unemployment checks and his wife's secretary's salary. By the early 1960s, he was so far out of the business that when Italian director Sergio Leone tracked him down to offer him a role, Van Cleef reportedly thought Leone was coming to get a painting estimate. Instead, on April 10, 1965, Van Cleef signed a contract to co-star as the cold-eyed bounty hunter Colonel Douglas Mortimer in For a Few Dollars More. He then played the black-hatted Angel Eyes in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly in 1966, the role that made him immortal. Leone later explained why he wanted Van Cleef to play the villain. He said the idea of getting him to play a character who was the opposite of his newly sympathetic image began to appeal to him, Angel Eyes, the most feared gunman in spaghetti western history, played by a broke, busted-up Navy veteran who was selling paintings to keep the lights on. Van Cleef died of a heart attack on December 16, 1989, in Oxnard, California, at 64. But does the next entry's Silver Star and Demons make even Van Cleef's fall and rise look painless? Number 4. The war hero who stormed a machine gun nest, alone and spent the rest of his life paying for it. Neville Brand. Neville Brand did not come to Hollywood through an agent or a screen test. He came through a war. Born Lawrence Neville Brand on August 13, 1920, in Griswold, Iowa, and raised in Kewanee, Illinois, Brand entered the Illinois Army National Guard in October 1939 and enlisted in the regular army in March 1941, months before Pearl Harbor. He served with B Company, 331st Infantry Regiment, 83rd Infantry Division, the Thunderbolt Division, and saw combat across the Ardennes, the Rhineland, and Central Europe. On March 1, 1945, in Germany, Brand's unit came under devastating machine gun fire from a hunting lodge. Every man was pinned down. Nobody could move. In his own words, years later, he explained it simply. He said, "I must have flipped my lid. I decided to go into that lodge." He went in through the rear, alone, and single-handedly cleared the enemy positions inside. For that action, he was awarded the Silver Star, the third highest decoration for valor in the United States military. 1 month later, on April 7, 1945, Brand was shot in the upper right arm along the Weser River and nearly bled to death. He was awarded the Purple Heart, the Bronze Star, and the Combat Infantryman Badge. After the war, Brand used the GI Bill to study acting and became one of Hollywood's most menacing heavies. He killed Elvis Presley's character in Love Me Tender in 1956. He was the first actor to play Butch Cassidy on screen in Three Outlaws. He starred in the Western series Laredo from 1965 to 1967 and appeared in dozens of Gunsmoke-era westerns. But the war never left him. Brand developed severe post-traumatic stress disorder, and the drinking that followed was brutal. In a 1975 interview, he put it plainly. He said the booze became medicine, and the only way he could face the morning was to grab a pint of whiskey just to make a phone call. He was also a voracious reader who owned over 30,000 books, one of the largest private libraries in Hollywood, until a 1978 fire destroyed his Malibu home and most of that collection with IT. Brand died of emphysema on April 16, 1992, at 71. A genuine hero who spent the second half of his life trying to outrun the first. But does the next entry's criminal record and legendary indifference make even Brand's war look like a chapter in someone else's story? Number 3. The chain gang runaway, who became the scariest man in Hollywood, Robert Mitchum. Robert Mitchum did not care what you thought of him. He did not care what anyone thought. And that is what made him the most dangerous screen presence of his generation. Born on August 6, 1917, in Bridgeport, Connecticut, Mitchum's father, a railroad worker, was crushed to death in a rail yard accident when Robert was 2. By 14, the boy was gone, riding freight trains across America as a hobo. He picked up odd jobs, picked up boxing, and picked up trouble. Around 1933, in Savannah, Georgia, while still a teenager, Mitchum was arrested for vagrancy and sentenced to a chain gang. By his own account, he escaped. He drifted west, took whatever work he could find, and stumbled into Hollywood. And for the next 5 decades, he played villains with a lazy-eyed menace that made audiences feel like the screen itself was unsafe. In 1955, he played the Reverend Harry Powell in The Night of the Hunter, a tattooed, murdering preacher with the words love and hate inked across his knuckles, ranked the 29th greatest villain in American film history. In 1962, he played Max Cady in Cape Fear, a sadistic ex-convict stalking Gregory Peck's family, ranked 28th on that same list. 2 of the most terrifying villain performances ever filmed, both by the same man. Then, on the night of August 31, 1948, Mitchum was arrested for marijuana possession at a cottage in Laurel Canyon. He was convicted in a 45-minute trial and served time on a prison farm. The studio expected it to end his career. Instead, it made him a legend. Mitchum never explained himself. He never apologized. When asked about his acting method, he said he just showed up and did what he was told. When asked about the arrest, he shrugged it off. He was the only man in Hollywood who genuinely did not care, and that indifference was more terrifying than any script a writer could produce. Mitchum died of lung cancer on July 1, 1997, in Santa Barbara, at 79. But does the next entry's battlefield wound and Arlington grave make even Mitchum's outlaw life look like recreation? Number 2. The Marine sniper whose war followed him to every set, Lee Marvin. Lee Marvin did not play tough, he was tough. And the difference between playing it and being it is the difference between a movie set and a beach full of machine gun fire. Born Lamont Waltman Marvin Jr. on February 19, 1924, in New York City, Marvin enlisted in the United States Marine Corps on August 12, 1942, at 18. He served as a scout sniper with I Company, 3rd Battalion, 24th Marines, 4th Marine Division, and participated in 21 amphibious assaults across the Pacific, including Kwajalein, Eniwetok, and the assault on Saipan. On June 18, 1944, during the battle for Mount Tapochau on Saipan, machine gun fire severed Lee Marvin's sciatic nerve. A sniper then shot him in the foot. He was dragged off the field and spent 13 months in naval hospitals. Of the 247 men in his company, only 6 walked away without being killed or wounded. He was awarded the Purple Heart and medically discharged as a private first class, having been demoted from corporal for what his record called troublemaking. That troublemaking followed him to Hollywood. Marvin threw scalding coffee in Gloria Graham's face in The Big Heat. He led a motorcycle gang in The Wild One. He was the sadistic Liberty Valance, the villain so dangerous that an entire John Ford film was built around the question of who killed him. He played a cold-blooded assassin in The Killers. And in 1965, he played dual roles in Cat Ballou, the drunken gunfighter Kid Shalene, and the silver-nosed killer Tim Strawn, winning the Academy Award for Best Actor. His biographer documented the drinking and the brawling. Marvin reportedly rode drunk on the roof of director John Borman's car up the Pacific Coast Highway. John Wayne reportedly threw Marvin and his buddy Keenan Wynn off his yacht and into the Gulf of Mexico. On the set of Cat Ballou, co-stars confirmed that Marvin used real alcohol to play Kid Shalene. And Marvin himself summed it up in one sentence. He said, "It was the Marines who taught me how to act. After that, pretending to be rough was not so hard." He died of a heart attack on August 29, 1987, at 63. He is buried at Arlington National Cemetery, right next to Joe Louis. But there is one man left. And what he did on a frozen battlefield in France makes every other entry on this list step aside. Number 1. The most decorated soldier in American history, who slept with a loaded gun under his pillow, Audie Murphy. Remember those claims at the beginning? One man was rejected by the Marines. One man became the most decorated combat soldier in the history of the United States. One man slept with a loaded pistol under his pillow for the rest of his life. They were all the same man. His name was Audie Leon Murphy, and he was the most dangerous man who ever appeared in a Western. Born on June 20, 1925, near Kingston, Texas, the 7th of 12 children of dirt-poor sharecroppers, Murphy tried to enlist the day he turned 18. The Marines rejected him for being too small. The paratroopers rejected him for being too light. He stood 5'5" and weighed roughly 110 pounds. The Army took him. Murphy was assigned to Company B, 1st Battalion, 15th Infantry Regiment, 3rd Infantry Division, and shipped out to North Africa, then Sicily, then Italy, then France. Over the next 2 years, the kid who was too small for the Marines would become the most lethal soldier in the American military. On January 26, 1945, near Holtzwihr in the Colmar pocket of eastern France, 2nd Lieutenant Audie Murphy's company was hit by 6 German tanks and approximately 250 infantrymen. His men were being overrun. Murphy ordered his entire company to fall back. Then he did something that no screenwriter would put in a movie because no audience would believe it. He climbed on top of a burning M10 tank destroyer, grabbed the .50 caliber machine gun mounted on its turret, and opened fire. The tank destroyer was on fire. Its fuel and ammunition could have exploded at any second. Murphy stayed on top. For nearly 1 hour, he fired that machine gun into advancing German infantry and armor, alone, wounded in the leg, calling in artillery strikes on his own position. His Medal of Honor citation records that the enemy reached as close as 10 yards from him, only to be mowed down by his fire. He killed or wounded approximately 50 enemy soldiers by himself. When his ammunition ran out, Murphy climbed off the burning wreck, refused medical treatment, and led his company in a counterattack that drove the Germans back for good. The United States Army credited Audie Murphy with killing over 240 enemy soldiers, wounding more than 500, and capturing approximately 100. He was awarded 33 United States decorations, including the Medal of Honor, the Distinguished Service Cross, 2 Silver Stars, the Legion of Merit, 2 Bronze Stars, and 3 Purple Hearts, plus French and Belgian honors. He was the most decorated American combat soldier of the Second World War. Hollywood came calling. Murphy starred as himself in To Hell and Back in 1955, the highest-grossing film Universal had produced up to that point. He then did something remarkable for a man with his reputation. He played the villain. In No Name on the Bullet in 1959, Murphy played John Gant, a hired killer who rides into a small town and lets the whole population tear itself apart, wondering who hired him. It was a cold, calculating, almost silent performance, and it proved that the most dangerous man in Hollywood could be even more frightening when he was quiet. But the war never left Audie Murphy. He suffered severe post-traumatic stress disorder. He could not sleep. He kept a loaded pistol under his pillow. He battled an addiction to the sleeping pill Placidil. He struggled with gambling and filed for bankruptcy in 1968. Director Don Siegel said Murphy carried a pistol on set, and much of the crew was afraid of him. There is one story that says everything you need to know. At a Hollywood party, the notoriously violent brawler Lawrence Tierney started causing trouble. Tierney was 6'1" and feared by every man in the room. Audie Murphy walked up to him, looked him in the eye, did not raise his voice, did not raise his hand, and told Tierney to leave. Tierney left. On May 28, 1971, Murphy's twin-engine plane crashed into Brush Mountain near Roanoke, Virginia, in rain and fog. All 6 people aboard were killed. Audie Murphy was 45 years old. He is buried at Arlington National Cemetery with full military honors. The kid who was too small for the Marines, 240 enemy kills, 33 decorations, a Medal of Honor, a loaded gun under his pillow, and the cold eyes of a hired killer in a Western that proved the most dangerous man in the room does not need to raise his voice. From a gentle giant whose kindest smile hid a Signal Corps veteran, to a carnival prizefighter who went 6 rounds with the heavyweight champion of the world, to a chain gang runaway who became the scariest eyes in cinema, to a Marine sniper buried at Arlington next to Joe Louis, to a 5'5" sharecropper's son who held off 6 German tanks alone. These were the 10 most dangerous Western villains of old Hollywood. And if their stories taught us anything, it is this. The most terrifying man on screen is the one who has already seen something worse than any movie could show him. If this countdown surprised you, hit subscribe and join us next time. Because the golden age of Hollywood is full of villains whose real lives were more dangerous than any role they ever played. Thank you for watching the complete video. Did you know? Americans over 60 lost $7.7 billion to scams last year. That's according to the FBI. In 2020, that number was just 600 million. These aren't careless people. These are retired teachers, veterans, business owners, losing an average of $83,000 each. Now ask yourself this. Could you spot a phone call that uses your grandson's cloned voice, begging for help? Would you recognize a fake email from your bank that looks exactly like the real thing? Do you know what to do in the first 60 minutes after your personal information is stolen? If you hesitated on any of those, you're not alone. And that's exactly why we started The Lookout, a newsletter with 1 email per week. No spam, no politics. Just the latest scams explained, how they work, and exactly how to protect yourself and the people you love. The link is in the description and in the pinned comment. It costs nothing. It takes 2 minutes to read, and it might save you everything.